I'm going to call the meeting of the Personnel Administrative Affairs Committee to order. Today is Monday, February 3rd, 2025, and the time is 10:56 p.m. This has been duly noticed in 2 places, including the city's website, in accordance with the requirements of RSA 91A. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Sure will. Alderman Tim Senate is here. Alderman Thomas Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
Alderman at Large Ben Clemens, Vice Chair. And Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly, Chairwoman.
I am here.
We have 5 in attendance.
I think everyone else is leaving. Okay, great. We also have Mayor Jim Donches, Tim Cummings, Steve Bolton. Looks like John Griffin is leaving us.
Madam
Did
Chair,
I miss anybody? Yep.
point of order. Are we going through the presentations and discussions tonight, or can we move those to another date?
Yes, I'm sorry, not Alderman Cummings, Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you. Tim
Sorry,
Cummings,
Dick.
Director of Administrative Services. Due to the lateness of the hour, I'd actually ask that we postpone the presentations and any of the communications I have. They're not time sensitive, so happy to come back at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And then the prime sponsors of some of the ordinances further on also asked to table. So
Okay.
we do still have, I believe, everyone who is supposed to be here for an interview, and they have waited very patiently.
And public comment.
And public comment, yeah. Okay. Public comment is actually what's next.
Paula Johnson, 15 Westbourne Drive, 024-041. Is that going to be tabled tonight for the next meeting? The elderly, increasing the elderly exemption amount.
It is still on the table.
Is still, okay. I'm here to speak about that because at the last meeting, Mr. Cummings was unprepared to come in and talk about the income level for married and single, 2 income levels. I'm a little bit disappointed here because, you know, Mayor, I'm sorry, you and I had that discussion. $57,000 is a slap in the face to married couples here. And the reasoning is like really a joke. You know, there's single people, and if we raise it for married, then the single people aren't going to be happy. Well, you know what? As a married couple, my husband and I, bless you, have 2 incomes here. And we don't get the advantage. I don't even know if we would qualify for that exemption. But you know, the seniors of the city deserve more. And you keep raising the exemption, but we need to talk about the income level. And when I came in the last time, I prepared a whole spreadsheet and I gave it to everybody. And they're still talking about, Mr. Cummings is still talking about $57,000, which is stealing from the public here, the seniors. And so I'm proposing where Hollis has $72,500 for married. Bedford has $81,780. Amherst is $73,325. And the thing is that we have the highest tax base here. We're $14,134,761,806, and Bedford is $7,929,642,104. And they have $81,760. So I think it's really a slap in the face to us seniors that we can't have the married income exemption. And I think you really need to look about this because I come in and time out and talk about this all the time. And you know, if we can't do it now to help our seniors, when are we going to help our seniors? Many of us, as I've said, have lived in our house over 40 years. We paid for schooling when our kids, before they went into school, and we're still paying. We pay for everything in this city. And you know, people might dispute it, but I'm sorry. And next time I'll come in because I'll be more than happy to send you off all a copy of the email that I sent to Mr. Cummings talking about everything that we're doing with the maintenance and looking at pay grades. We're looking at all this, but yet the seniors, it's a big joke. We're throwing us a couple of crumbs here. But thank you for your time, and I'll continue this next meeting. Have a good night.
Please send the email. Any other public comment? Okay, as we heard, presentation and discussions will happen at our next personnel meeting. Communications.
Communication has been received from Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, regarding general update and discussion on Facilities Department. From Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, regarding general update and discussion on compensation study for unaffiliated employees. And from Bob Gagney, regarding elderly exemption and disabled exemption review, January 2025.
There being no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. Interviews.
For trustee of the trust funds and capital reserve funds, David Fredette, new appointment, term to expire March 1st, 2027, 4 Henry Drive, number 408, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03062.
Oh, I think David, sorry.
Is Kristen here as well? Do you want to come up at the same time?
I'll read her in.
Yes.
All right. Joining us as well will be Kristen Kane for the trustee of trust funds and capital reserve funds. New appointment, term to expire February 1st, 2027, 14 Wood Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03064.
Mayor, if you could please introduce.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So for this, let me go back just a little bit of background. So over the years, during the time David Fredette was the treasurer and even before maybe, the different trust funds that have been handled by various boards with their investment advisors. So the biggest ones, we have the BPW Pension Trust Fund, which is $57 million or so. We have the Library Trust Fund, which is much smaller. We have the Woodlawn Cemetery Trust Fund, and we have the Edgewood Trust Fund. And each of these boards of directors handles the investments in those trust funds using an investment advisor. And as it happens this morning, the BPW Pension Fund met with its advisor, RBC Wealth Management, and they reported on the results over the last number of years. They've been managing the funds for, I think, 13 years or so. And they've done very well. In the last 5 years, there have been $20 million of investment gains, even though they invest money pretty conservatively. Anyway, so what Ms. Enright has proposed is that instead of there being multiple investment advisors with multiple boards supervising the various trust funds, that there be a single board that oversees all of the trust funds and engages a single investment advisor. This would have the advantage of saving money in terms of the compensation for the investment advisors. Number two, a uniform set of guidelines and policies regarding how the funds would be invested. And Ms. Enright has met with the library, with the 2 cemeteries, with the pension board, and they've all, although had questions, they've all said they were comfortable with moving forward with a single fly here. Where is this? With a single board, a single investment advisor, with input from the various boards, but basically one single investment approach. So, to that end, I'm proposing 2 citizen members of that board. First, David Fredette, who, of course, you're very familiar with, city treasurer for tax collector for a number of years, 20 years or so. And also, he's now chair of the BPW Pension Board. So he's very familiar with the job of working with an investment advisor. And also, Kristen Kane, who's to my left, a resident of Wood Street, as you just heard. You're not nearly as familiar with her as you are with David Fredette. But if you look at Ms. Kane's resume, you'll see that she's had a whole series of financial jobs, having in various corporations. Currently with Commonwealth Fusion Systems LLC.
I have to update that one. This resume is slightly out of date. I left Commonwealth Fusion Systems in April 2024. I'm now at a company called Ion Corporation as controller.
So she's been a corporate controller a couple times and has had other jobs in finance. Is a graduate of the Whittemore School over at UNH, both with a BA or BS, and also with a master's in accounting. She got very good grades in both of those programs. So she's very well qualified to help us guide the investments, along with Mr. Fredette and the various other people who are on the committee. So with that introduction, I will ask first Mr. Fredette and then Ms. Kane to tell you a little bit about why they are interested in helping the city by volunteering for these two positions.
Mr. Fredette?
So we'll go to David first.
Okay. Actually, I'm wondering too at this late hour why I'm interested.
You can't withdraw now. You can't.
I'm way past my bedtime, so anyways, as some of you know, I've been involved with the city for a long time. I've done a lot of creations of portfolio management. I've worked with the cemeteries over the years. I worked with the library. Many years ago when they elected a new investment advisor. I have been involved with the Board of Public Works Pension Fund for many, many years. And we have selected advisors over the years, and that's a process in itself. You have a lot of people who apply, you have to narrow it down, many interviews, but so I think that is the kind of stuff that we're going to have to do for this trustee of trust funds.
Okay.
Although I believe the trustees of the pension have discussed this, I'm not sure if they actually made a decision yet, but I think there's more to come on that, you know, with Dawn and Wright, so,
Well, of course, the pension board has the biggest
yes,
amount.
as
And RBC was quite good, I thought. Today.
yes, 57 million, which is the highest it's ever been, which is good.
So Ms. Kane also has been persuaded that she should stay till 11 at night, and obviously very dedicated in order to wait that long. So I will, let's see what she has to say about her interest.
Sure. So I've been serving on the Library Board of Trustees since 2019, I think. Maybe Jen remembers around then. And I love our city. So I've been the person on the Board of Trustees at the library that kind of represents kind of that financial point of view. And we've been talking on that board about being overdue to kind of go out and evaluate and shop for our investment managers. Not that they're doing a bad job, but it's not something that we've prioritized. So this came along at the right time to form the trustee of trust funds. And I think I agree with Dawn and Wright when she came and talked to us. It's a good way to save money and make sure that we have a very routine and regular process with the right experts on the board looking at the services that are provided. A little bit about me. So the mayor mentioned that I've been working in kind of financial capacities for a long time. I'm an accountant. I've been a controller at a number of companies, mostly startups. The one I'm at now is a very, very small startup, but the one I was at previously, Commonwealth Fusion Systems, I was there for 4 years. And relevant to this role, while I was there, we raised a significant sum of money, $1.8 billion, which sounds like a lot. It's not a lot when you're trying to do fusion energy. That's a very expensive endeavor, but we needed to make that money last. So my role there was really to bring in investment management firms and evaluate them and interview them, put in the investment policies for that organization, and then keep that quarterly review process going for that company. So I did that while I was there for 4 years, and I handed it off to the next person once it was built. That's one thing I've done. I've also been a fiduciary and an administrator for a number of 401k plans, which, while not similar, many of the same considerations come into play.
Great. Okay, questions from the committee? Alderman Lopez.
First, a comment. This idea definitely is overdue, but my understanding is there's no penalty for that at the library now. And then additionally, to the mayor, there was a situation that came up a couple of months ago where a member of the public asked, had we invested in specific funds? And the answer was, well, no, the city doesn't invest in that. And I understood the answer to have been nuanced, as some of the commissions or boards might have had investments to that effect. Will this entity be the city, or will at the very least, will we have a more centralized understanding of where money is being invested? If
Well,
we were asked that
the
question?
discussion had to do with, like, the city, by that I mean not the trust funds by these independent boards, but the city's accounts and its fund balances and all that are never invested in risk assets. It's only CDs. In fact, it's illegal to invest in risk assets with those funds. So it's CDs at the or treasury bonds, but basically CDs. And David can tell you all about that. Now the trust funds for the various boards that we've talked about, the BPW, the library, and the 2 cemeteries, they are invested in, their goal is not to preserve funds, but to grow funds. So they invest in risk assets, although in a conservative fashion. So if you take the BPW pension fund as an example, and we just heard the presentation today, they have 2/3 of their assets of $57 million invested in various stock funds, usually kind of ETFs and mutual funds as opposed to individual stocks. And they have 1/3 of their assets invested mostly in U.S. Treasuries and other very conservative income-producing investments. So, but those are all risk assets, and they could go down. But the idea of the investment advisor is over time to use the momentum of the growth of the economy and the growth of the market to expand the assets of that trust fund.
So the commission or overseeing body here that Mr. Fredette, and it's really hard not to call you treasurer, and Ms. Kane are going to be on, isn't the city. It's still an oversight board.
It's
that really
overseeing
represents
these various trust funds.
Okay, so that was the main thrust of my question is when, I don't know, hypothetically, some alderman brings forth a motion where people are calling to divest from specific areas, that's not quite that easy to do when you start to account for all of the other entities that are within the city.
Correct.
But
Correct.
at least we would know where those are, and there would be maybe a more ready answer if we were asked for information like that. There were some claims.
I mean,
that
when
were
I
raised.
saw what RBC is doing, I mean, there are no individual stocks at all. So you would have to say, well, the ETF of large stocks in the S&P, Standard & Poor 500, it contains a company you want to divest from. Well, you can't, you'd have to sell the entire S&P ETF to even try to do that. I mean, you can't, you're buying a package of 500 different companies all at the same time. So I'm not sure divestment would really be even possible.
I was not really advocating for that. It was because that issue came up that
Yeah.
I like.
Well,
how
as
would
it
we do
turns
that?
out, they don't really own individual stocks. They own kind of indexes, but not stocks.
One final thing is what came up from that was that our city should have a financial policy or report of some kind that was updated regularly. Is that something that would be doable by this?
Well, each of these trust funds does have that.
Okay, but isn't there supposed to be one that is from the Board of Aldermen that we approve every
Well,
year?
you don't invest in risk assets. I mean, you just buy CDs.
Yeah, I don't think he was specifically saying assets, but the comments in public comment where we're supposed to have a policy that is reviewed and approved by the board regularly.
I suppose you could do that, but you'd say, invest in CDs, that's what you'd say. I mean, that's all you can say, because you
I
can't go.
would not tell anybody how to invest anything.
That's all
so
you could say.
I'm just asking if they
You
can
can't
figure it out.
really, you don't really have discretion. So there's really, a policy would simply say very little, because you have no discretion to move beyond CDs and bank deposits. I mean, you don't really have the ability or you can't legally go beyond that.
Okay, maybe the policy would be partly Alderman should.
Yeah, it could be one
advise
line.
funds.
You have to invest in CDs and bank accounts, you know.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any questions for?
There's already that in law, so.
The claim was that there's something we're supposed to be reviewing.
The claim
every year.
the claim is
That's the claim.
misguided or, I want to say it diplomatically. It misunderstands the breadth of discretion that the treasurer has in putting the city's own funds in place in banks and CDs.
Okay, well, I don't want to stir the pot. I just wanted to understand the organization. Ms. Kane, thanks for volunteering for yet another helpful city function, and Mr. Fredette as well. I don't know where you guys find the time, but I appreciate the effort.
My understanding, though, that I believe each of these groups would still have their own policy.
They could, well, yes, now, that's been sort of worked out with Ms. Enright and the board, so
They're all,
I'm not
similar.
involved in those discussions, but,
yeah.
which is fine. So, but the single investment advisor could implement various policies for each of the boards, right? Yeah.
Alderman Jenny.
Kick the snowball.
Thank you. So I may have misunderstood the presentation made by Ms. Enright. So through you to Corporation Counsel, is there or is there not a state law that requires us to have an entity called the trustee of the trust funds? And aren't there certain requirements that entity, trustee of the trust funds, reports?
Trustees, plural, of the trust funds, plural, yes.
Okay, so there is some requirement that the trustees of the trust funds report to us, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But just to be clear, the various funds have been, the details have been reported to the AG's office every year for decades, and they're fine with what's happened. But and have approved, and David can tell you this, have approved everything the city's done every year. So, but here we would have a single group of people who would pick an advisor who would work with the various boards to invest the funds.
Okay. And could I follow up?
Alderman Jettie.
So, for Mr. Fredette and Ms. Kane, so if I could ask you, both, I understand what the mayor said about, not, these, the library trustees and the Board of Public Works trustees, don't, pick and choose individual stocks. But there are groups, that are packaged to attract certain individuals. For example, personally, I don't pick individual stocks, but with my investment advisor, I instruct him to find, vehicles, they're mutual funds, or they're groups of, several different types of stocks. but I instruct him that, I don't want to be investing in fossil fuels. I would like something that offers, that is encouraging a greener, goal, something that, is investing in, solar or wind or, those types of things. And, so there are, without picking individual stocks, you can instruct investment advisors that, for example, we as a city would like to, foster, green energy, and we don't like tobacco, so we don't want to invest in tobacco companies. What are your feelings about those kinds of things?
Mr. Fredette?
My feelings are probably fairly conservative. I may want that for my own funds, but when I'm investing funds for a pension, I want the best return that I can get for the pension plan. I'm not so much interested in what we're doing, what stocks or whatever we're investing in, as long they're legal, of course, but,
Buying any cannabis farms or anything?
And I'm very well aware that they have these plans where they invest strictly in certain areas, like you said. But as far as I know, we don't do that at the pension board anyways. We kind of, I'm not sure, exactly every type of investment, what is behind them all, but.
If it would be, might be interesting, we could circulate, so this is just the one pension fund, but it's the largest by far. So they submitted today a report on what they've got, what things are invested in. Maybe it'd be interesting, maybe we could circulate that to the Board of Aldermen for the 57 million. But it's like, 2/3 are in stocks, and say half of that is in large caps. There's 3% in foreign funds. There's a very small, it was small, 3-4% in small caps. There's a bunch of mid caps, stuff like that. It kind of allocates it that way. And they don't get as specific as sectors such as you just mentioned, probably because they're trying to pursue a balanced approach that will perform as well as those sectors of the market. Small caps, large caps, things like that. But anyway, we could circulate it, and you could kind of see what they're doing.
I also.
Also, Alderman Jettie?
I was out of the Public Works pension for a couple of years, but we do have a website, and I believe they put those reports, current reports, on the website that people can look at. But I'll double check on that.
Also, Alderman Jettie? Oh.
Yeah, well, Ms. Kane, could you?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at where I am employed, I'm very much aligned with sustainability. It's been quite a bit of my career. I can be an accountant anywhere. I choose to be an accountant where I can make an impact on the mission. So personally, I'm very aligned with that. What we can do on the trustees of trust funds really is driven by the investment policy. So our first task is to craft that. Once the investment policy is formed, we have a fiduciary duty to abide by that investment policy. So we can consider putting things in that policy that would limit us to certain funds, although it might not be, and we would work with the different library board and Board of Public Works, it might not be in the best interest of the goals of those organizations who are actually expending those funds to limit. And it could limit our options later if, say, certain industries turn south. So I would not, personally as a representative on that board, not a trustee on that board, I would not recommend limiting the investment policy to only sustainable funds or something like that. Although I would ask the investment manager to bring us information on funds like that so we could see their track record and see if, at this particular time, it might make sense to invest that way. I don't know if that's a helpful answer.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Thank you. But I hope you see the disconnect between, you've got people, on BPW, pension plans who are, suffering from cancer caused by smoking, and you're investing in a tobacco company. It's kind of, I'm not saying you personally.
I'm not sure we do anyways, but.
Yeah. That was my point. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Alderman Clemmons?
Just a quick question. So this board, was this board created by ordinance or or is it state statute?
We did it by ordinance, didn't we? Yeah, we proposed an ordinance and you passed it, I think, right? I'm looking over, it's so late, who can even remember?
Expect
I
us to
don't
remember what we've
recall
done?
that, but that's
I think we
certainly
passed an
possible.
ordinance.
As said before, the state
So
statute
the answer is both.
contemplate
Both.
that there's a trustees of the trust funds organization, board.
Can we look into that? Just because I want to make sure we're actually appointing you to something that exists.
That exists, the trustee of trust funds. I don't know if it's, I'm pretty sure it's an ordinance, but I could be
Was
wrong
it
there, but I know it's.
From a long time ago, or
No, I think we passed an ordinance, in the last 6 months.
maybe we did and I don't remember.
I mean, I because I think that was the first step.
Okay.
But we can review, it's, 11:30 or so, and.
I was
people's-
hoping you could get it to me by, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Good.
What time we're gonna get home?
1 o'clock.
We're not going anywhere. We'll wait.
Okay, that was one question. Can I just quickly, so I just want to say thank you to you both. The fact that you're here at this hour shows your dedication. I had no doubt on, I know Mr. Fredette very well. But again, thank you very much, and you'll see what I do here. You're both a wealth of knowledge, get it? I know,
All right.
very late.
Okay, no additional questions from Alderman? We will take up your nomination in like 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
We have one more. One more.
Jim, you still have Jen McCormick?
Oh, yes, Jen, I forgot. Sorry.
It's like, where are you going?
Next up for Board of Registrars, we have Jennifer McCormick, new appointment, term to expire February 11th, 2028, 43 Lund Street, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03060.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to introduce your,
All right, so the Board of Registrars is a nonpartisan, bipartisan group that oversees the checklist, basically, and works with the city treasurer, or the city clerk to try to expand registration, register people to vote and the like. And there's an opening on that board, and sometimes those are hard to fill. And Ms. McCormick at the library, and as you well know, she's director of the library and has been for 15 years. She says it's the best job she's ever had, so that's nice. She, in that role, has been involved in trying to get people to vote and interested in registering and things like that. So she basically came forward and said she'd like to be on the Board of Registrars, and I think that her experience and knowledge is perfect, so I'm very glad to appoint her.
If I, just to add to that, one success story we had this past fall, the library collaborated with the city clerk's office, and we did some voter registration drives at the library, evening and weekend hours when the clerk's office can't do that. And we registered 49 voters during those. By having someone from the library staff on the Board of Registrars, that really takes work off of the city clerk's office, that I could be supervising those voter registration drives, which meets the city's goal, and I think everyone's goal, to register as many people as possible to vote.
Alderman Clemmons, then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. So, right now, and I know this is being battled in the courts, but right now, you have to, in order to register to vote, you have to prove your citizenship in New Hampshire. Is that still the case, correct? I think.
That-
I think that law passed, I think,
pass?
just
I
after.
don't-
the,
That's why I went,
Okay.
The city clerk, Dan Healy, is here, and he can answer all that in detail.
If you could, just have a question about it.
Yes, so Dan Healy, Nashua City Clerk. So last year, HB 1569 passed, which went into effect about a week after the general election. So that is in effect now. People coming in to register to vote need to prove age, citizenship, domicile, and identity. Prior to that bill passing, if a resident was missing one of those things, they could fill out an affidavit, swear to it under penalties of perjury, and register to vote. Now, all that documentation, they need to actually bring it and have it in order to register to vote. It is, I believe there's going to be a few challenges. There's already some organizations saying they're going to challenge it. We've actually had to turn away some people in our office that don't now have, that come in and they're not bringing all the paperwork, and we have to tell them that they need to go get it and, come back, so.
Can you clarify
Alderman
what,
Clemens.
and I'm sorry to get a little off, but you'll see where I'm going. Can you clarify what do they need, like a passport or a birth certificate?
Yes, so for citizenship, they need to prove citizenship, so it would be birth certificate, passport, that type of paperwork to actually prove it. That's one of the more common things that people don't bring when they're registering to vote. The citizenship or CVA, or QVA, qualified voter affidavit that was used prior, was one of the more common forms used. So someone comes in to register to vote, they usually have their ID, they probably have maybe they just registered their car. They provide that paperwork to us, but they don't typically have a passport or birth certificate with them, so then they would have to go get that. The Clerks Association was against it last year. We testified saying it's going to disenfranchise voters. It makes it difficult for voters to register, especially when you're looking at election day. We thankfully don't have a scheduled election until November. There's towns that are going to be voting in March, so these issues are going to be worked through, but there's probably going to be a good amount of voters being turned away for these upcoming town elections that are bringing all the paperwork.
thank you. Alderman Clements?
I really appreciate that explanation, because it brings me to my point, which is, I know about those voter registration drives that you've done at the library, and I appreciate them. What I would like to see, in particular because of this new law, is more of an effort to get out into the community and do it in other places. So at both high schools, at the library, in different places, and then just to do an education drive behind the fact that you now need this documentation. And I, am hoping that it gets overturned. I'm hoping that it's found to be unconstitutional. I think it violates people's rights. If you had if you were not registered to vote and you had a fire and you lost all of your documentation the night before, you could show up to register to vote and not have anything and be turned away and be disenfranchised. It's wrong. That being said, we have to comply with the law while it's in place, and so what I'm hoping is that you would take that cause and lead that cause and get people to have the right documentation and get them registered to vote before Election Day, so that we can get there. And I hope that the clerk would also be behind that effort as well.
Yes, and to that point, leading up to the general election, we did voter registration drives at both high schools. So that helped. I think between the two, we registered around, I want to say 70 students prior to the election. We had a board of registrars meeting last week, and some of the discussion was relative to more outreach going forward, so.
Excellent, thank you.
Great.
And thank you for coming forward and wanting to do this. It's important, obviously, it's a very important job, and it's something that is our most sacred right, so, thank you.
Great. Alderman Senate, then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. McCormick, for stepping up to do this. I share Alderman Clemens' sentiments wholeheartedly. I'm pretty sure you know, and most of the folks around me know, that in my past life, I worked way too many elections at hours much later than we're at now. But I'm encouraged to hear that you've already had collaboration with the city clerk's office on outreach efforts, because I feel that's, regardless of what role you're playing in our elections as an official, that's one of the most valuable tools in your kit is outreach. And I mean, really, who better than the director of our library to help conduct that? I mean, not only will you be presumably a member of the Board of Registrars, but surrounded by a wealth of information and resources that can help overcome the challenges that Alderman Clemens had articulated earlier with folks who may not know where to go to find, the documents that they need to vote. So I think that's going to be a very valuable asset. And I'm clearly just vamping at this point without any real questions. But one comment that I would like to make from my experience in working elections is that another area of outreach that I'd like to see, and I know it's been a challenge in past years, and I know Clerk Healy has been working on it, is the recruitment of deputy registrars. Because that is as equally difficult a job as serving as a moderator, a selectman, or a clerk on election day. And every ward, I think, would want for more astute folks who are really ready to dive in there, because especially when you get into these big elections like we just had in the end of 2024, that's where your lines are. Your lines aren't in the S through Z lining up to get your ballot. It's the folks that are new to the neighborhood, especially in neighborhoods like Ward 4 or Ward 7, where we see much more transient residents, new voters every single time. So having those astute, ready, willing deputy registrars to greet them and to get them on the path to the next table is something I'd really like to see. So I'm really excited to see you here tonight. Thank you for staying so late and bearing with us, and I'll be happy to support your nomination.
Thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
I think that was me. Alderman Lopez?
Who else would I be talking about?
One
That was
second.
you.
Yeah, I was recently described as controlling elections, which I find to be ridiculous since I usually stand outside of them most of the day. It is the Board of Registrars and the City Clerk that oversee and manage those. So it's a very important role. I can't think of anybody better qualified to do it. To the point that my previous colleagues were making regarding engaging people and making sure that people who have a constitutional right to vote are able to exercise that. I also think the library is a great place because it's a place where a lot of people who are homeless or unsheltered are able to access support and resources. And I mean, they may not have had a fire recently, but having worked with the homeless for, like almost 2 decades, it's really hard to get your birth certificate and your ID together at the same time. And usually you need multiple pieces of documentation to get the other ones. With that in mind, I would encourage maybe thinking of approaching some of the case managers or larger organizations that might have residential populations that might not have their stuff done. Things like maybe Delena's House, where a veteran coming in is spending all their time trying to get their DD-214 and all that stuff, and may not be thinking about elections early in. But if we make it easy and we're able to register to them and say, okay, you're moving into these residential programs, let's get this done now. It's one less barrier for them later when they finally found their housing plan or sustainability plan and they're working on earning it. But then, the thought comes the morning of the election, oh, I don't even have my stuff and I got to go to work. So what can I do? So maybe coordinating with the continuum of care or some of the larger residential populations, maybe even some of the sober housing, to make sure that we're not forgetting that population as well.
Okay. I always get to go last, which is fun. Most of the questions I had were asked, especially around doing more voter registration. You were very qualified for this. I like the interaction with the public and the library in this role, so I'll be supporting your nomination. I will just make a comment that I appreciated Alderman Clemens's line of questioning, and I do want to see the city, whether it's through the clerks or the registrars, make an effort to make sure people understand that it has changed and it's going to be harder to vote on election day. So, thank you. We're going to take up your nomination, and as soon as I say itinerant.
Thanks, everyone.
Ready. Application to license hawkers, peddlers, itinerant vendors license.
There are none.
Appointments by the mayor.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the reappointment of Cole Morgan to the Cable Television Advisory Board with a term to expire March 31st, 2027. To recommend the reappointment of Jessica Holland to the National Airport Authority with a term to expire December 31st, 2029. To recommend to the trustees of the trust funds and capital reserve funds the new appointments of David Fredette with a term to expire March 1st, 2027, and Kristen Kane with a term to expire February 1st, 2027. To recommend the reappointments to the 201 Main Street Financing Corp. Of Deb Novotny and Rich Lannon, both with terms to expire December 31st, 2028. To recommend the following, or the reappointments to the 201 Main Street Real Estate Corporation, Deb Novotny, Rich Lannon, and William Barry, all with terms to expire December 31st, 2028. And to recommend the new appointment of Jennifer McCormick to the Board of Registrars with a term to expire February 11th, 2028.
You've heard the motion. Is there discussion on that motion?
Well done.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Unfinished business.
There is none.
New business resolutions. We've disposed of our 25-121.
Did we actually motion to table?
In the other meeting.
We did. We put it on the table at the full
I
board.
thought you expressed
All right,
intent.
so I'm just gonna make
So.
a note here real quick. Thank you. All right.
New business ordinances.
Before us, we have O-25-045, increasing public comment time limits.
The endorser and original sponsor did request that we table this.
With that in mind, I'll make a motion to table.
Motion is table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's tabled.
Next up is O-25-046, providing information on the tax bill about property revaluations and providing for future notifications of upcoming citywide revaluations.
The sponsor of this bill also asked us to table.
And with that in mind, I'll make a motion to table.
Before you make that motion, I noticed that Clerk Healy is here. I don't know if he came here to speak about that.
He's shaking his head no.
No? Never mind.
Okay. All right, so motion to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Tabled in committee. Alderman Clemens.
I don't have a motion, but I did want to say, just for the record, that the ordinance 2444, which was endorsed by Alderman Moran, he did ask us to take it off the table. However, I don't think he contemplated that we would be here till almost midnight. So that being said, I think we should leave it on the table, especially because the other ones around the same subject are all on the table. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yes, okay, thank you.
None of those motions.
So those stay on the table.
They will.
There is no public to give comment unless city clerk would like to speak. Okay, great. General discussion, I'll just say thank you to everyone for bearing with us. In the future, we'll look at potentially long meetings before we go into hours. Alderman Clemens.
So in regards to that, should we consider having a special meeting in addition to the one in March? I don't know what the crystal ball holds for us as far as the next two. I know that I may have legislation that's coming, well, no, that would go to infrastructure. I think. But I don't know what the crystal ball holds, like as far as our March meeting may go. I don't know if it,
Yeah. I would be perfectly open to a special. I think I'd like to talk to Donna and see what
yeah.
timeframes are available, and I think there's a lot of important pieces here where, I mean, we put the elderly tax exemption on the table so that we could bring everybody who wanted to talk about it forward. So if the committee can give me what they thought, if they would like to have a special, I think that might make it so we're not here till midnight. But I just would request that I can work it out with Donna, make sure everybody who needs to be here could be here. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I would be willing to come as I'm able, but I would also point out that I'm going to be away from February 20th to 27th, so not that week.
Yeah, me too. So I don't know. But.
You're not coming on Saturday?
Or maybe we start earlier in the night.
Yeah, that's possible. Let's just not ever do a public hearing on a tax rate before a meeting. Does everyone agree? Okay, great. Let me talk to Donna, and
Okay,
we can make a
we'll
decision.
throw out some options.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay. Would any of the aldermen like to make remarks, or are we still on or did you still have general discussion?
I'm not sure what category it falls into, but I want to thank Corporation Counsel Steve Bolton for being here all night with us. Thank you very much.
Alderman Lopez?
Fully aware that it's petty. I just want to point out that we were asked to table the motion on extending public comment because the public comment in the public meeting was so long. And all of the people who used the public comment to essentially berate us for not caring also all left. So, thanks, guys.
Any additional remarks by aldermen? Great. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Oh, you're not opposed to it tonight, Tom?
No.
Or today?
Is it even tonight?
Oh, no, it's still tonight. 13 more minutes. Thank you, everyone.
RSA